All right. We'll present my amendments after you've presented the bill as it becomes.
Absolutely. Babies are created in the image of God. We believe that they feel pain at 15 weeks. There are some other witnesses that are here today and going to be interested in providing some further information on that point. And basically, we thank our sister state of Mississippi for striking a blow in the cause and defense of the life of the unborn. And basically, the legislative findings in their bill that was passed states that United States is one of only 7 nations in the world that permits non-therapeutic or elective abortion on demand after the 20th week of gestation. Fully 75% of all nations do not permit abortion after 12 weeks gestation except to save the life and preserve the physical health of the mother. Again, this is from the legislative findings in the Mississippi statute. The statute's important because it gives us some chronology on the development of unborn babies. Between 5 and 6 weeks, according to the bill, an unborn baby's heart begins beating. The baby begins to move around in the womb at approximately 8 weeks. At 9 weeks gestation, all basic physiological functions are present. At 10 weeks, a baby's vital organs begin to function. Hair, fingernails, and toenails begin to form. At 11 weeks, an unborn baby's diaphragm is developing, and he or she may even hiccup. He or she is beginning to move about freely in the womb. At 12 weeks gestation, an unborn baby can open and close his or her fingers, make sucking motions. That baby can sense stimulation from the outside the womb. And as the United States Supreme Court noted in Gonzalez versus Carhart, 540 United States 124 in 2007, that baby has taken on, quote, the human form, unquote. And of course, we understand that the Supreme Court has long recognized that the states have an, quote, important and legitimate interest in protecting the potentiality of human life and in protecting the life of the unborn. That's from both Roe v. Wade and the Planned Parenthood of Southeast Pennsylvania versus Casey, 505 U.S. 833, United States Supreme Court, 1992. There's currently a heartbeat bill in Congress with 178 sponsors. So the United States Congress shares our concern. And this is what we believe. If the Fifth Circuit upholds the Mississippi ban on abortion after 15 weeks, and we do not have a legislative instrument in place that bans or that limits post 15-week abortions, between the time of the Fifth Circuit ruling and the next legislative session, let's say, for example, if the Fifth Circuit rules in January of 2019 to uphold the Mississippi statute, and we don't have our next regular session until March, that is approximately 7 or 8 weeks of Louisiana allowing babies over the age of 15 weeks to be killed. We want to have the statute in place, so as soon as we obtain the Fifth Circuit ruling, we have a law in place to protect these babies. And of course, I will make known my own personal view as both a citizen and legislator that upon enactment we should enforce the bill. I understand and I want to address that some people say we need to be very deferential to the federal courts. I will simply say you can't always predict exactly what the federal courts are going to do. There's a changing in personnel, a changing in the guard of the federal courts that's continual. And I'm concerned, and I speak out against a culture of surrender to the federal courts. I do not believe that we should allow the federal courts to subsume our state legislative function. They have their functions, and we have ours. As previously been stated in this building, I don't think we should refrain from doing the right thing today because we believe that someone else may do the wrong thing tomorrow. I understand that there is an expenditure of money. I cannot think of a better expenditure of money that Louisiana could make. It's been said that the litigation could cost several $1 million out of a budget of over $28 billion. I don't know of a better expenditure that we could make than to protect the life of the unborn. I will note in Roe versus Wade, the United States Supreme Court left at 12 weeks, said the decision was left up to the physician. Roe v. Wade did not prohibit a state bar on abortions in the first 15 weeks. The Supreme Court said in Roe v. Wade, after 12 weeks, the state may regulate abortion in ways reasonably related to the the mother's health. And the Supreme Court said that after viability, the state may regulate or ban abortion, except for the preservation of life in cases where it's necessary to preserve the life of the mother. In short, Roe v. Wade authorizes abortion in the first 12 weeks. I will state, as a citizen, as a member of this legislature, I'm against abortion at any point. I believe it's murder of the unborn, murder of human beings. But in terms of a legal analysis, Roe does not prohibit abortion bans after 15 weeks. That does not make abortion bans after 15 weeks illegal. We do have other witnesses that are here to talk about the physiological, moral, and medical aspects of this bill, but I'll certainly want to answer any questions if there are any.
All right, there's going to be a question from Senator Mills, and while Senator Mills is posing his question, I'd like to pass out the amendment 2343. Senator Mills.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think we're all on the same page that so many of us are pro-life. In fact, I've done a lot of pro-life legislation. I think the last thing I did was to ban a chemical abortion in Louisiana, working with so many of our pro-life friends and advocates and groups.
Thank you, Senator Mills.
Well, thank you for your work and thank you for your passion. But I guess I'd like you to address the point that I know you've been talked about, and several of the pro-life experts have talked to me about that regionally and statewide, that this would basically almost weaken the present laws that we have on file. And it's been a concern that the strategy is perfect, but it seems like, address that from a legal standpoint. Now, I guess because I know you've been talked about it also, but it's almost like if this legislation would pass, it would be almost a weakening and a step back from where the pro-life folks have been able to make major strides.
Well, I disagree, because this law, if passed, will make it illegal to kill unborn babies after 15 weeks. So it's going to, if enacted, it would protect the life of babies that are not aborted during the first 15 weeks. So I disagree with that. I am aware, some people have said that will cost the state money, may cost a few $1 million, and out of a $28 billion budget, I believe that spending several $1 million to protect our babies from being killed in the abortion mills is a worthwhile, and I can't think of a more worthwhile expenditure of our money. In addition, as I set out, I think ethically, it's indefensible to be killing unborn babies at any age. I feel like that's something that God's going to hold us accountable for. But in addition, I will say that even from a legal, from a perspective of legal analysis, Roe v. Wade does not prohibit a post 15-week abortion ban. And I believe this would be a several-week span of time, Senator Mills, where our state would take a stance that says we're not going to tolerate abortions during this time frame. If enacted, if implemented, if enforced, this could save the lives of hundreds and potentially thousands of babies, pending what most people are awaiting, that is a sea change on the United States Supreme Court, which allows states to get back to banning all abortions if they feel like that is a proper exercise of their power to protect the life of their citizens.
So many of the pro-life legal team that has said if Roe v. Wade was thrown out, then 15 weeks would be the baseline in Louisiana.
And actually,
do you agree with that statement?
Well, actually, I believe that an amendment could fix that, and that would simply be that if Roe versus Wade, and by the way, it's an amendment that I will commit to, if this committee passes the bill, I would absolutely endorse an amendment that states that if Roe versus Wade is overturned, that Louisiana would adopt the position that life begins at conception and that no abortions are allowed. So that is an amendment. That's a legislative, and of course, I know you've been drafting legislative instruments for seems like a long time. I know, like 10 years in the Louisiana Senate. But that's a very easily doable amendment. I don't know if if anyone on the panel wants to do that. But at this hearing, but the bill could easily be amended that says if Roe versus Wade allows the states to ban all abortions, this bill could have a built-in amendment that says upon such a ruling that Louisiana would adopt a position that life begins at conception and any abortions of unborn children are illegal. So that's I think a 1 or 2 sentence amendment that if this bill, I will commit to you, and I may or may not make any difference in your vote on this issue, but I absolutely will commit that to an amendment that says simply that if Roe versus Wade gives the states back the authority to ban abortions, I will want that language in the statute, because my goal, and I believe the goal of the millions of people in Louisiana, the vast majority of our citizens, is to outlaw abortions. This is it's a curse, it's a scourge, it's an unforgivable practice that we're sitting in this room. As we're sitting in this room across Louisiana, babies are being aborted. And the medical evidence, the physiological evidence, the neurological testimony by the experts, including former abortionists, and we have some people who are ready to testify to that, say that when these babies are aborted, even before 15 months, they're clearly showing some cognitive and neurological function. They're showing sensitivity to pain.
I'm going to jump in here.
Go ahead.
I think we're okay with the conversation that you've had and the questions. Has your question been answered, Senator Mills?
It has been, and I still want to continue to listen because I do still have concerns. And I guess I did want to tell the good senator and the committee that I'm working on a resolution that would be drafted and dropped in to urge our Attorney General to file an amicus brief in Mississippi to make sure that we join forces with Mississippi, because I know we have a lot of dual tracks, but I think that's very important that he join forces, see what we can do with Mississippi.
Well,
but I'll continue to listen.
And listen, and I appreciate that. I also
Senator,
do have a resolution to ask Attorney General Landry to file an amicus brief with the Fifth Circuit in support of the Mississippi position.
Okay, so Senator Mills,
I'm good.
All right.
Well, and I'll simply say this,
hold
if I
on,
can say it in a sentence.
Hold on, Senator Milkovich. So as far as amendments that are being offered, the chair is offering Amendment 2343. Did they give you a copy, Senator Milkovich? And the way the amendment reads, and as lawyers, we can have some differences of an opinion, but I think it's trying to achieve what you were talking about earlier. It's an effective date amendment to the statute, and it says the provisions of this act shall become effective immediately upon and to the extent permitted by any decision of the United States Supreme Court that upholds the authority of a state to prohibit a physician from performing any of the following acts on a female after 15 weeks from the date of conception. And then that's language that we're familiar with below. So I'm trying to achieve the language that you were talking about. I may not be achieving it.
Well, if you allow me to respond,
Sure.
I think there should be an amendment that says if Roe versus Wade recognizes the rights of states to fully regulate and prohibit abortion, that Louisiana would.
So, and I hear what you're saying.
That Louisiana could ban abortions at any point.
I think this
post-conception
is more expansive in that if the Mississippi case goes up and it's decided in the direction that you would like, and Roe v. Wade isn't touched, then it becomes effective. I don't want to make it effective only on Roe v. Wade. I think this does more of what you want than otherwise.
And of course, I think I object to the amendment, and with due respect, Mr. Chairman, because I think we need to stop the abortions, period. But I will note this also. This is a suggested amendment to the amendment. This says any decision of the United States Supreme Court. I think it's better to put Fifth Circuit, because it's more likely that we're going to get Fifth Circuit's going to look at this more, sooner than the United States Supreme Court.
Okay, and I hear what you're saying, and if it gets out of committee, perhaps that would be a great discussion to have on the floor. If we'd ask Senator Barrow to come in, I'd like there to be discussion of adoption of Amendment 2343. Okay, the chair has offered Amendment 2343. Any questions on the amendment? Any questions on the amendment? All right. Any objection to the amendment? Seeing no objections, Amendment 2343 is adopted. So you understand the posture that it's in. I know you have other people that you'd like to
Sure.
testify on the bill. We have a number of green cards, many of which wish to speak. I ask that you not be particularly repetitive. I don't want to cut you off, but if you're saying the same thing that somebody else has said, please consider not saying it multiple times. Wayne Gravois, MD. Is there a Wayne Gravois? If you'd come forward. Thank you, Dr. Gravois. Let's see, there's Tina Marchand, if I'm saying that right. Miss Marchand, if you'd come forward. Have a seat. Thank you, Miss Marchand. John, do you mind giving up your seat?
I do not.
Okay. And then there's, let's see here, Mike Bourgeois. Mr. Bourgeois. Okay. And we're going to go from my left to my right. So if you'd identify yourself and then tell us what you'd like us to know. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. My name is Tina. I'm a retired labor and delivery nurse, and I have taken care of hundreds of women who've had their pregnancies threatened, and I've seen them endure being bedridden for weeks and months, having their children at home being taken care of by somebody else, financial strain, just a lot of things. And then I started doing sidewalk counseling at the abortion clinic here in town, and in a day's time at the hospital, we did 20 deliveries. At the clinic, in 1 hour's time, I saw more than that number of women go in and out, just nonchalantly, making appointments to terminate their pregnancies. I'm going to do some comparisons and contrasting. Last week, I sat here Tuesday listening to a lot of the proposals of the Senate bills. And I was just kept my mind on those babies with each one that I heard. SB 38 wants to protect innocent people from wrongly being convicted while the perpetrators go free to continue their crimes. The little babies come into this world with the fate of being mutilated, dismembered, suctioned out, etc., all the procedures. Their perpetrators were given the rights to continue killing these babies. SB 51 wanted to eliminate the death penalty. I thought death penalty was for people that were convicted of murder. These babies come into this world with their fate already determined by mere people that hadn't had any kind of a crime committed to those little lives themselves. Also, the comment was made that it is increasingly hard to kill someone. Why isn't it for the abortionist? And there was concerns of mental issues with the murderers, getting them taken care of, letting them go through treatment. But some of these women, I think they have the solution to a problem, not knowing that the instant they terminate this baby, there's another problem that presents for years and years and years. They go to very depressed places of unforgiveness, and a lot of them are silent about it and just suffer and suffer and suffer. SB 79 wants to protect children being molested in every aspect of their being victimized by teachers, etc. Yet, Planned Parenthood is protected and funded to kill the most innocent of innocents. I'm going to give a testimony of a Dr. Lisa Harris, professor and abortionist. She's 18 weeks pregnant when she began a routine second trimester abortion at a hospital in Ann Arbor, Michigan. This is what she said. I went about doing the procedure as usual. She writes, I used electrical suction to remove the amniotic fluid, picked up my forceps and began to remove the fetus in parts, as I always did. I felt lucky that this one was already in breech position. It would make my grasping small parts, legs and arms, a little easier. With my first pass of the forceps, I grasped an extremity and began to pull it down. I could see a small foot hanging from the teeth of my forceps. With a quick tug, I separated the leg. Precisely at that moment, I felt a little fluttery thump in my own uterus. It was one of the first times I felt fetal movement. There was a leg and foot in my forceps and a thump in my abdomen. Instantly, tears were streaming from my eyes without me, meaning my conscious brain, even being aware of what was going on. I felt as if my response had come entirely from my body, bypassing my usual cognitive processing completely. A message seemed to travel from my hand in my uterus to my tear ducts. It was an overwhelming feeling, a brutally visceral response, heartfelt and unmediated by my training or my feminist pro-choice politics. It was one of the more raw moments in my life. Doing second trimester abortions did not get easier after my pregnancy. In fact, dealing with the little infant parts of my born baby only made dealing with dismembered fetal parts sadder. I'm just not understanding this lady. Harris nevertheless continued her practice of pulling babies apart in dismemberment abortion and inflicting unimaginable pain to their victims. She disregarded the promptings of the Holy Spirit and continued down the path to perdition. Harris notes that this violence of abortion must be acknowledged and relates a bizarre experience she once had of observing a premature baby struggling to survive immediately after dismembering an unborn child the same age. The last patient I saw one day was 23 weeks pregnant. I performed an uncomplicated D&E procedure. Dutifully, I went through the task of reassembling the fetal parts in the metal tray. It is an odd ritual that abortion providers perform, required as a clinical safety measure to ensure that nothing is left behind in the uterus to cause a complication. But it also permits us in an odd way to pay respect to the fetus. Feelings of awe are not uncommon when looking at miniature fingers and fingernails, heart, intestines, kidneys, adrenal glands, even as we simultaneously have complete disregard for it. Then I rushed upstairs to take overnight call on labor and delivery. The first patient that came in was prematurely delivering a 23 to 24 weeker. At her exact gestational age, as her exact gestational age was in question, the neonatal intensive care unit team resuscitated the premature newborn and brought it to the NICU. Later, along with the distraught parents, I watched the neonate on the ventilator. I thought to myself, how bizarre it was that I could have legally dismembered the fetus, now newborn, as if it were inside its mother's womb. But that's the same kind of violence against it now would be illegal and unspeakable. Lisa Harris continues to do abortions and boasts of her abortions, championing the feminist agenda despite the promptings of the Holy Spirit which were given to her when she was pregnant. This is something else that she had said.
Excuse me, Ms. Marchand.
Yes.
And I appreciate what you're helping us to understand, but we're talking about 15 weeks and in Louisiana, and I was here in 23 weeks and another state. But I just trying to get us directed to the bill itself. So I think...
Okay. Yes.
Keep going, but I'm just trying to get you in the right direction.
Okay, well, just trying to get the mindset of that person that does that.
I don't think anybody on the committee understands that mindset, so I appreciate
thank God for that. Yeah. Okay, well, she kind of acknowledges that pro-life views pretty much has right thoughts, but anyway, I'm appreciative, definitely, of the pro-life members, and I also think that we should go as far as we can on getting to Roe v. Wade. But right. I do support this bill.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
And thank you.
Dr. Gravois, is it Gravois?
Yes.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you to the committee for giving me a chance to speak. I actually contacted Senator Milkovich this week basically as a physician and caregiver, parent, grandparent, I was interested in the bill and testifying, again, as a family physician of about 34 years here in Louisiana. I finished LSU in 1981, took my Hippocratic Oath, went through the family medicine residency program, and one of the things that I have seen many times is pregnant women coming in, whether it's a threatened AB, abortion, or miscarriage, or the despair, the depression, the anxiety that they get when they lose the baby at any age. I was going to specifically talk about the 15-week part of the bill and the whether they can feel sensation, specifically pain. I am a medical director of the Pregnancy Problem Center here in Baton Rouge, where we deal with both women, mothers, and soon-to-be fathers that have issues with the pregnancy, decisions to be made both before, during, and after the pregnancy. So we do free ultrasounds at the clinic, and so I've seen several ultrasounds with our ultrasound techs. We do them at all ages. One of the things we do see, 15-week-old, the term can be used fetuses, but as a physician, when you see a 15-week-old fetus, it's a baby. It looks just like a baby. All the parts are there. The only thing that's pretty much not quite mature yet is the lungs, but everything else is pretty much intact. These babies, you can see them thirst. They'll drink the amniotic fluid. They'll urinate. They'll yawn. They'll move. They'll turn, they squeeze hands, feet. You'll see them smile. You see them frown. When the probe is pushed against the abdomen, they'll move away from the ultrasound probe. They obviously feel sensation. Quickening. The term quickening is a term that medical term, which means when the mother first feels the baby moving, and that usually occurs anywhere between 13 and 17 weeks. Usually women that have had pregnancies before, they'll feel it earlier and recognize the movement. Average is about 15 weeks, 16 weeks. So the baby is moving, the mother feels the baby at 15 weeks. Again, all organs are present. The thing that I was determined to be quick, brief, and the main thing I would want the committee to think about is, if you have not seen a 12, 14, 15-week ultrasound, a live ultrasound, you should do that, in my opinion, before you vote against this bill, because if you see the ultrasound in motion, the baby moving away from the probe, the baby smiling, to say that the baby doesn't feel sensation is certainly not true.
And just for clarification, you were talking about 12-week is where you're saying that you begin to see some of this bill is at 15 weeks, and so
correct. 15 weeks is the bill, and I'm specifically talking about the quickening at 15 weeks of movement and the 15-week ultrasound. Yes, I'm sorry. Yes.
Well, it's okay. I'm just trying to get us focused on what the issue is, and you've explained it very well to us.
And one of the things I will mention is that sometimes these ultrasounds are not exact on due dates. In fact, the earlier, if you've had any family members that are pregnant, the earlier the ultrasound is performed, the better the recognition, identification of the due date. So what may be a 16 or 18-week pregnancy by an ultrasound could actually be a 15-week or 14-week. So I'm just saying, or it could be so there is a little bit of inexact science with this.
Yes, sir. So thank you, Dr. Gravois, and then we have Mr. Bourgeois. Thank you for coming today, Mr. Bourgeois.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Senator. and thank you for giving me this opportunity. This goes to the most of the discussion earlier, and also for me to mention that quickening is one of the concepts that gave us the Roe v. Wade decision. When Justice Harry Blackmun wrote the majority Roe v. Wade opinion, he said that since no two groups or no two individuals could determine the time at which life begins, and he mentioned quickening and some other couple of things, and since there was no technology available that could prove it, then he was going to have to err on the side of approving legalized abortion, even though the right to privacy, he admitted, is not in the Constitution. He justified it on the basis of a corona around the Constitution called a penumbra that doesn't even exist. So Roe v. Wade is not a decision. It's an opinion. There's a difference between a decision and an opinion. A decision is final, an opinion is conditional. So he said, however, since we can't determine the point at which life begins either, if that point can ever be determined to be at conception, that, quote, collapses Roe v. Wade and our theory that the point at which life begins can't be determined. And when that is done, that guarantees 14th Amendment protection to all life in the womb from conception. That technology was developed in 1984 with the advent of DNA profiling, fingerprinting, which proves that for every animal creature on Earth, the DNA in the egg and the DNA in the sperm immediately recombine upon conception. And it has its own individual, unique DNA profile for life. If that's in the womb or out of the womb, it's as inherently human as it's ever going to be. But so, Roe v. Wade was collapsed scientifically in 1984, as the majority author said it should be. So why haven't we done it legally? This is like if, you remember Galileo and Copernicus put under house arrest because they didn't want to recognize their science? Everybody that wants to say that they believe in Roe v. Wade, what they're talking about is they want to believe in that time warp that's been disproven between 73 and 84. We put Galileo and Copernicus under house arrest again, but at least when they got under house arrest, people who are qualified for 14th Amendment rights, including the right to life, didn't die as a result. So, organizations like the Innocence Project, we have 3 ironclad federal laws that provide ironclad protection to eagles and turtles in the egg because they may be fertilized. But Roe v. Wade keeps season open on babies in the womb. And so because we won't recognize this, the Innocence Project has saved people from death sentences in every conceivable place of confinement except the human womb. Oh, what a difference being on the wrong side of the womb wall makes. People won't even recognize science. The one indisputable thing that they could do, quickening, schmickening. I mean, come on, guys. When are we going to do this? 1984 was a long time ago. And you know, I'm a member of the National Pro-Life Alliance. And they're the only pro-life organization in the country that is petitioning Congress to declare that life begins at conception. because Roe v. Wade can't be reversed by the Supreme Court. They don't have the authority to determine when life begins. Only Congress can do that. So John Kennedy, our senator, they send a note to each senator asking, would you vote for this bill that I think a Senator King in Minnesota or somewhere hasn't filed yet, that says life begins at conception? Kennedy did it right away. To my knowledge so far, and they tried to get Bill Cassidy to do this for years now, to my knowledge, he may have signed it recently, but he didn't. And he's a medical doctor. What did he do?
So, Mr. Bourgeois, on the bill, just to bring it back, if I can summarize what you're saying, you're for the bill, but I get the impression that you don't think it goes far enough.
It doesn't go far enough.
But you are for the bill, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay. Do you have anything else that you would like to add?
On the other two bills.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Bourgeois.
All right.
We have a Mr. Mahoney or maybe Maroney. Okay.
These are your copies.
You got to give them to this. All right. Have a seat, introduce yourself, and tell us what you'd like us to know. And try not to be repetitive if you can avoid it.
Okay. Dear Lord Jesus, let the Holy Spirit inspire us today. I asked Senator Milkovich to allow the movie The Silent Scream to be shown here, and he was turned down.
By me.
Yes. Have you seen that? Any of you have seen that? He testifies that he was the one who founded abortion in this country. He founded NARO. Bernard Nathanson. If you're not familiar with Bernard Nathanson, you need to see The Silent Scream. Period. He founded abortion. He killed 60,000 children. He killed his own child. In his book, The Hand of God, he had a conversion just like Saul to Paul. He had a conversion. With ultrasound, he said, we are scientifically and ethically dishonest. And the whole executive judicial lying that's going on about the innocence of the baby in the womb and that it's a member of the human family. Now, Lisa Harris, Tina was talking about, killed a baby while she was 18 weeks pregnant. Dr. Hayward Robertson talks about how he would go from the one room labor and delivery, go to the next room abortion, go to the next NICU. How incredulous this is that we allow this. That a doctor can deliver in one room, kill the same baby in the next room, and go to the NICU to try to save the life of that baby. We know, in the Clips of Reason, Dr. Bernard Nathanson said, he showed a 12-week-old baby, he's screaming for his life, fighting for his life, feeling unbelievable pain right in front of the eyes of a whole America. Eclipse of Reason, same thing, baby torn apart. We know that, the neurologists who have testified say, well, we're not sure when babies feel pain. That's nonsense. We do surgery in the room. I work neonatal. I'm a respiratory therapist and cardiac technologist. I put 1 and 2 pound babies on ventilators. This is unconscionable that we would kill babies in this state at 15 weeks, let alone saying that we don't need this bill that protects them. We are not only murdering a child, we are dismembering and torturing that child. The facts are on the Clips of Reason. The facts are on the Silent Scream. The facts are in neurology. When we do surgery on babies in the womb, which is commonplace now, they anesthetize them. The Nazis even did torture sessions, and you can look online, YouTube it, on babies in the womb, showing how they felt pain. So we need this bill. And the fact that we're talking about money, well, there's plenty of pro-life lawyers in this state. Pro bono. It won't cost the state a cent. If we're truly for life, we should have pro bono lawyers fighting for life and telling the truth. Now, the rest of my testimony for the next 2 bills are going to shock you because they're from the abortion cartel themselves, and they're from the Department of Health and Hospitals, and those who worked in the cartel, the violations they've done, and the falsification of every report for 38 years in this state. And we'll do that in the next bill. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for your testimony. We have also in favor of the bill, but not... she's checked. She doesn't need to speak. Ginger Brown Duhan. We also have Newman Robin. We We have Charles Carpenter, Richard Bliss, and Jamie Johnson. Those are the support cards. I have a white card from Dorinda Borderly. It says private attorney. She's present to provide information if anybody has questions. Seeing no questions from Ms. Borderly. I'll put that into the record. Okay. As far as red cards opposed and would like to speak, we have Ellie Schilling. Come forward, Ms. Schilling. And we have Amy Irvin that would like to speak. Come forward. And we also have a Gary Meese in opposition but does not wish to speak. As far as not to say that I see it as an issue, but the opponents were respectful and quiet during the testimony of the proponents, and I would ask that we show them the same respect whether you agree with their position or not. So we'll go from my left to the right again. Introduce yourself and tell us what you want to tell us.
Thank you, Chairman Claytor and Senators. I'd like to take a moment to center the women of Louisiana who are deciding if, when, and how to be parents. My name is Amy Irvin, and I'm the Executive Director of the New Orleans Abortion Fund. The New Orleans Abortion Fund provides financial assistance to women who cannot afford the full cost of abortion care. Working with local medical providers, we provide compassionate and empowering assistance to women seeking abortions and distribute pledges as available. Today, I am here to testify against SB 181, an especially cruel and dangerous bill that endangers women's lives by withholding vital health care after 15 weeks. All doctors, including abortion care providers, must be free to exercise their medical judgment and provide treatment as needed. Instead, SB 181 inserts politicians squarely between doctors and their patients, forcing physicians to abandon their own ethics and good practice. Doctors being told to adhere to political agendas over individual care and medical expertise. Furthermore, SB 181 blatantly ignores long-standing Supreme Court precedents established in Roe v. Wade and reaffirmed most recently in Whole Woman's Health versus Hellerstadt that guarantees the right to decide whether to end or continue a pregnancy, a decision central to a woman's personal dignity and autonomy. Women are moral agents, and we must respect their right to follow their own conscience when making moral decisions. The New Orleans Abortion Fund trusts women. Our clients are strong, self-assured people who have made the decision to have an abortion after careful consideration of their physical and mental health, family needs and finances, and plans for the educational and employment futures. 70% of our clients already have children. They are well aware of the impact of pregnancy and parenthood on their lives and are worthy of our support and respect in their health care decisions. Women should be able to exercise their moral and legal right to terminate a pregnancy without obstacles, including arbitrary time constraints. The New Orleans Abortion Fund was founded in response to federal and state laws restricting insurance coverage of abortion care. Since then, this legislative body has put political ideology over sensible public health policy and passed legislation requiring clinics to have medically unnecessary admitting privileges, a law that ultimately led to clinic closures, a ban on the most common second trimester abortion procedure, and a 72-hour delay. In 2016 alone, 7 anti-choice bills were signed into law, all of them currently being litigated at the cost of Louisiana taxpayers. Louisianans deserve better from their lawmakers who represent us. With Louisianans already threatened with cuts in services and economic insecurity as a result of an unbalanced state budget, to the note of $650 million in a funding gap, it is irresponsible for policymakers to pass anti-choice legislation that will result in costly litigation. It's unconscionable to relentlessly shame, judge, and punish women who need reproductive health care. We trust Louisianans to carefully consider their options and obtain the care they need. We call on you and your Senate colleagues to trust your constituents and to vote no on this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Introduce yourself and tell us what you want us to know.
Yes, thank you, Senator Clater. Thank you, committee. My name is Ellie Schilling. I am an attorney who represents and advises the reproductive health care clinics in the state. Some of you already know me because I've been to the legislature before to testify many times. But I'd like to say from the outset that I respect the fact that some of you have a different policy position on this issue than I do. But I hope that we can all agree that spending taxpayer money on costly litigation during this budget crisis is bad for the citizens of our state. So that's what I'm here mostly to tell you about today, because a 15-week ban is clearly unconstitutional. And if a 15-week ban is passed, it will do nothing but waste taxpayer money by litigating the constitutionality of a law that will not be upheld. And I appreciate the concept of the amendment that was offered earlier. I'm not so sure that that would insulate the bill from litigation. I'm also not so sure that that amendment will stick and that this bill won't go back to being something that would go into effect more immediately and that therefore would be litigated immediately. I think it's important to understand the gravity of what the state is spending. It's important to understand the amount of abortion litigation that has already ensued in recent years. Ms. Irwin referred to this a little bit, but the cost to the state in pursuing this litigation increases all of the time. Since 2014, 6 different lawsuits challenging Louisiana abortion restrictions have been filed. All 6 of those lawsuits remain pending today. One of those lawsuits challenges all 7 of the abortion restrictions that were passed during the 2016 legislative session. It's also important to understand that of the pending litigation, the state is by and large losing. The state lost the admitting privileges case at the district court. The state lost a case filed by Planned Parenthood at both the district court and the Fifth Circuit. The state lost, with very limited exceptions, the motion to dismiss that was filed with regard to the 2016 legislation. And only about 2 weeks ago, the state lost its motion to dismiss regarding another pending abortion case. So what is this costing the state? It's difficult to determine exactly how much Louisiana taxpayer money has been spent on all of this litigation, but it is in the millions of dollars. From publicly available information from the Division of Administration, the state has spent around $1.5 million just on outside legal counsel, on private attorneys that the state has hired. But that's not the real cost to the state, as you guys know. The amount spent on outside legal counsel is likely higher, and the $1.5 million does not include the time and resources spent by in-house lawyers and staff at agencies like the Attorney General's Office and the Department of Health. The time and resources our government officials have spent is significant over many years, and these cases will require continued investment for years to come. That amount also does not include the motion for $4.7 million in legal fees that has been filed in the admitting privileges case. These lawsuits all involve statutes where the state has to pay the plaintiff's attorney's fees if the plaintiffs prevail. The plaintiffs have won that case at the district court, and because the state continues to fight that case on appeal, the attorney's fees on both sides, which the state will likely ultimately be responsible for, continue to mount. Briefly, in terms of the constitutionality of a 15-week ban, I think that a lot of what has been said so far is inaccurate. There is no possible reading of Roe versus Wade that would allow a 12-week ban, let alone a 15-week ban. The ruling in Roe that was reaffirmed in Casey and then in Whole Women's Health is that a state cannot ban the abortion procedure pre-viability. And there's no scientific argument that 15 weeks is viable. Every single pre-viability ban that has ever been proposed has been struck down by the courts at either the district court or the appellate court level. In Arizona, in fact, a 20-week ban was struck down. We have a 20-week ban now. In Arkansas, a 12-week ban was struck down. In North Dakota, a 6-week ban was struck down. A pre-viability ban has never been upheld, and there's nothing in the Supreme Court precedent that would support it. Also, if the committee has any doubt whether this bill will be challenged, as we've heard a little bit from the proponents, the bill's already being challenged in Mississippi. Mississippi passed a 15-week ban just a couple of weeks ago. There was an injunction on that bill within 24 hours of the governor signing it. That injunction remains in place, and now the law is blocked pending a costly trial that will be held in September. So if a 15-week ban is passed here, the result will be the same. So at this time of unprecedented budget problems in Louisiana, the legislature should not force the state into yet another costly legal battle that the state will ultimately lose. For example, if the $1.5 million that the state has already spent solely on outside legal counsel had instead been spent on TOPS, then for the 2017-2018 academic year alone, the state could have funded an additional 200 TOPS scholarships to LSU, an additional 354 TOPS scholarships to Southern, or an additional 259 TOPS scholarships to University of Louisiana Monroe. As another example, last week the Senate Finance Committee passed a really good bill that would extend certain foster care services from the age of 18 to 21. That legislation is estimated that it will cost the state $1 million a year to implement. So there's been a lot of discussion about whether there's room in the budget for such a program. If the legislature prioritizes programs like that, rather than prioritizing legislation that will be overturned by the courts, then we can fund more effective foster care services. So as I said at the beginning, I truly understand that some of you have different policy positions than I do on this issue, but I hope that we can all agree that it's detrimental to the public interest to pass legislation that will inevitably lead to more costly litigation for the taxpayers of Louisiana. Thank you for your time. I'm happy to answer any questions you guys may have.
Well, thank you for your testimony. I don't see any questions. Thank you, ladies. Ms. Dorinda Borderly, would you come back you actually never made it to the table, but there's questions. Senator Mills, have a seat, Ms. Lee. Borderly, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Ms. Borderly, we've worked in health and welfare. We've had many bills that we've all worked together on. Could you kind of give us an address maybe on now that the bill's been amended? What are your thoughts and from your expertise or what you see? And you represent so many groups with pro-life. Just your thoughts on the bill as amended.
Thank you, Senator Mills. And I want to thank Senator Milkovich for being so concerned about both the sanctity of life of the unborn child and the millions of women that are hurt by abortion. This bill as amended, and first of all, I want to clarify that I'm here as a Louisiana attorney, as a private attorney. I am not in support or opposition to this bill because I am providing pro bono legal counsel to the Louisiana Attorney General's office on many of the lawsuits. I'm not authorized to discuss our legal arguments. I can tell you that they are vigorously defending bills that address many of the things that the proponents of this bill brought up, including a ban passed in 2016 on dismemberment abortions. And so we already have in effect a ban that will prohibit the dismemberment of living human children. And that's not just at 15 weeks, but before, often at 12 weeks. And so that law is in effect going through the courts. I can't tell you what the arguments that the Attorney General will use because that's a confidential thing, but that may get to the United States Supreme Court before Mississippi's law does. This bill, as amended, has some unintended consequences. In 2006, and it's hard to remember all the bills that we passed through the year, but in 2006, this body passed a bill that said upon the Supreme Court reversing Roe in whole or in part, in other words, upon the United States, as this amendment says, giving the authority back to the states to prohibit abortion. When that happens, if that fifth vote ever does come about, then our 2006 law, and it's in Title 40, Section 1061, says that our current law that banned abortion before Roe will go back into effect. And that is found at Title 14, Section 87. That law says that there will be, all abortion is prohibited except to save the life of the mother. So unfortunately, this bill would amend our total abortion ban to say abortions are allowed up to 15 weeks. And so upon reversal of Roe, whether it's the Mississippi case that goes up or a Louisiana case or any state, when the authority, the proper authority of this to go back to the states goes into effect, then instead of us having a total abortion ban, we are now allowing abortions up to 15 weeks. And that amounts to about 95% of all abortions. So unfortunately, this bill has the unintended effect of weakening Louisiana's pro-life laws.
And how long you've been doing this?
24 years.
24 years. And just not in Louisiana, huh?
Around the country and around the world as well. And I understand the frustration of the people who are here, because we all are in agreement that this bill doesn't go far enough and all abortion should be illegal. But of course, the Supreme Court has a hold on that right now. And what the regular citizens don't see is the behind the scenes work every day, every single day, that an army of lawyers are working not to bow to the federal courts, but to get the federal courts out of this business and bring this issue back in the states in the democratic process where it should be. The Supreme Court has gotten it wrong in the past. In Dred Scott, they said that black people were not individuals. Dred Scott was wrong. That was the Supreme Court. In Buck versus Bell, the U.S. Supreme Court said that we could sterilize people that were called imbeciles, but it was really about Carrie Buck, who was called a promiscuous woman, and a Supreme Court justice actually said 3 generations of these kind of people are enough, and so they could forcibly sterilize them. The U.S. Supreme Court has gotten policy issues that they shouldn't be legislating on from the bench wrong in the past. And if in the future they allow the states to make the policy and them interpret it as they should, then Louisiana is already in the strongest position than anyone in the nation. And so we don't want to unintentionally weaken that position.
Thank you for your testimony, and it's been a pleasure working with you all the years. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Senator Mills. Question. Hold on. Ms. Portley, have a seat. Senator Perry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With you reading the amendment, and basically the amendment saying that it shall become effective immediately upon only if any decision by the Supreme Court upholds the authority, and goes on. Here's the position. I'm not speaking for anybody else, but for me, here's the position I get stuck in. I am 100% pro-life, as pro-life as you can get, from conception to the next second. So with the amendment, even if someone sits here and says this is a bad bill or whatever else, how am I look voting against this bill?
Senator Perry, I appreciate that question. And again, I'm not in support or opposition to the bill. I'm just trying to educate you on what the impact of the law would be.
All I'm asking is, like, from the legal standpoint.
From a legal standpoint, this will weaken Louisiana pro-life law. But I can mention this. I heard that Senator Milkovich said earlier that he has a resolution for the Louisiana Attorney General's office to file an amicus brief and give whatever legal help we can to Mississippi. That resolution, the legal impact would be good for Louisiana law, because if that case is the one that ends up in the United States Supreme Court, and then our 2006 trigger law goes into effect, then I think that would, from a pro-life policy point of view, be very helpful. So if Senator Milkovich was to bring forward that resolution, that instead of Louisiana duplicating efforts that Mississippi is already doing, and you see, Mississippi doesn't have the trigger law we do. Mississippi doesn't have a total abortion ban. So they're in a different position. And so these legal intricacies, this is a complicated area of law, because the United States Supreme Court it creates legal fictions about using time periods and words like viability. You know, when the court is legislating from the bench and making up rules that they make up as they go, it's hard to keep track of who's on first. But I can tell you that from 24 years of legal experience, no matter how you vote on this bill, yes or no, this bill will unintentionally weaken Louisiana pro-life law. However, directing Louisiana to assist Mississippi in their law would strengthen our position.
So where are the ordinary groups that speak for and against these type of things that we're used to hearing? Why aren't they here saying that?
You'd have to ask them that.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Any further questions? All right. Senator Barry, you have a question for Ms. Borderly?
Sorry, really quickly, because I've definitely been following the whole line of conversations. Even when I wasn't in the room, I was listening to make sure that I wasn't missing anything. So right now, we have some of the strongest laws in the country, correct?
Yes.
And if this, the amendment got on. So now the amendment, if that other component goes into place, will actually weaken.
Yes, it would allow abortion up to 15 weeks, which it allows 95% of all abortions.
And right now,
I'm sure that's an unintended consequence.
And right now, what is it? Right now, is it conception?
Right now, once the issue is returned to the states,
yes, that's what I
all
meant to say.
abortion would be banned from conception except to save the life of the mother.
Okay. I just want to make sure that I was clear, because I too share the sentiment of my colleague, and everybody know here that I say I'm pro-life from the womb to the tomb. So this definitely is giving me a little pause.
So the Mississippi law is currently enjoined, and so any appeals to the U.S. Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, the Attorney General supporting them and perhaps leading a multi-state effort would be a helpful thing for the senator to consider.
Okay, thank you so much.
Don't take off, Ms. Borderly. My turn. Thank you, Senator Barrow. So just to add a little bit of clarity here, I hope. With or without the amendment, your discussion about it, in your words, weakening Louisiana's law. Tell me, with the amendment, it weakens Louisiana law. Without the amendment, weakens the Louisiana law as well? I want to understand, in your legal opinion, what the amendment does, if anything, to either weaken or not weaken Louisiana's law.
The original law.
I'm talking about the bill.
Okay, the original bill amends 1487. So that's our criminal code where abortion is banned. 1061 says that upon these things happening, upon the U.S. Supreme Court sending it back to the states, we go back to 1487. 1487 would have been amended to now allow abortions up to 15 weeks. Unintended consequence, because most states don't have our type of law. This spells it out. You know, what your amendment does is puts into writing what the next step would be, which is if the United States Supreme Court returns this to the state, we now have a weakened law.
All right. So if just discuss the amendment a little bit further, the United States Supreme Court says we're not overturning Roe v. Wade, but we're agree that we're going to dial it back to 15 weeks, then that amendment would be an effective tool, would it not?
If the United States Supreme Court
says Mississippi's right.
Says Mississippi's right and just stops at 15?
Correct.
Then Louisiana's law would, let's see, if Louisiana's law, I'm speculating now, and lawyers
That's
speculating,
what we do here.
You know, the 1061, I believe, says to the extent. So it says if Roe is reversed in whole or in part. And so we would probably argue that to that extent, our law would be in effect as well. But if legislation needed to be passed, I'm sure that this body could pass that legislation. And again, there's already in the works a dismemberment ban that applies even before 15 weeks. It talks about a procedure that dismembers the child while it's still alive. And the U.S. Supreme Court in Gonzalez versus Carhart said that even pre-viability, the partial birth abortion ban, where they deliver the child breech except for the head and then suction out the contents of the skull, that can be banned. It is banned here in Louisiana and in about 30 other states. That's pre-viability. This dismemberment law, which is pre-viability as well, would reach that effect, and that is currently in litigation here in Louisiana.
All right, so I'm going to try to repeat what you said and see if I'm getting your opinion correctly. The dismemberment law covers some of this that's captured in Senator Milkovich's bill. Doesn't cover all of it, covers some of it.
Correct.
Am I right?
Correct.
All right. The bill itself is pretty straightforward and simple, 15 weeks. Beyond that, we don't do it. So I don't really see where the amendment harms the bill in that sense that you discuss, and that if the amendment's not on there, it immediately goes into litigation, assuming that it comes out, and then we have it there. So whether it's immediate now as a part being effective, or immediate upon it being decided by the proper court of appeal, what difference is that going to make in your legal opinion?
In my legal opinion, this amendment says that it becomes effective upon the issue coming back to the states, which means the minute that we had the chance to outlaw all abortion, this goes into effect. And we have now abortions up to 15 weeks.
All right. And so as far as having, for lack of a better term, a warning that that's getting ready to happen, what cases are in the pipeline now that gives you the opinion that the Supreme Court's, or not opinion, what cases are in the pipeline now to the U.S. Supreme Court that would potentially say that?
There are many abortion cases in the pipeline, and at any point in time, any of those cases could argue, if there were the sufficient amount of votes, that Roe was wrongly applied, and that the states have very important interests in protecting both women and children.
Okay. And you think the amendment is harmful to the bill or immaterial?
It's harmful because it's harmful to Louisiana law.
All right. And the bill itself, unamended, harmful or not?
Both of them are unintentionally harmful to Louisiana pro-life law.
All right. Okay. Senator Mills?
You may not want to answer this question, but I guess I just need to ask it. It seems like this conversation probably took place with either you or someone else with so many of the pro-life groups that we all work so closely with, because I don't see any of those groups here, and we know who they are, because when we have health and welfare, I know Senator Barrow and Senator Claytor and myself, we're familiar with when they're in force and they're championing an issue, they've done their research. Have they had these same conversations that this committee is having, and that's why they're not here today, you would guess?
Senator, I'm not authorized to speak on any groups. I'm here as a Louisiana citizen who's very familiar with Louisiana pro-life law to educate you on the legal impact of this bill. And I can tell you that abortion at 15 weeks or any weeks, when you're dismembering human beings and harming women, both psychologically and medically, and there's a host of things that these other people have talked about, it's the Holocaust of our day, and that there are efforts being undertaken every day. And I know that everyone in the pro-life groups are on the same page, and there are sometimes instruments that have unintended consequences.
Thank you for your testimony, and thank you for your legal advice. Thank you.
All right, Senator Mills. Any other questions from the committee? All right. I don't see any other questions from the committee. If you'd come forward, Senator Milkovich.
And
Before you get started, Senator Milkovich, Senator Perry has a question. Senator Perry.
And you may cover some of it in your closing. Did the questions that we had and the testimony we just heard, I don't know any other way to put it, Senator, you just putting us in a box.
Actually, I'd like to respond because I tried to be quiet and hold my peace.
All right.
Number one, I would like for the committee to consider.
Senator Milkovich, just one of the things that I try to do is when you start your close, I don't like to let anybody interrupt you. So I'm going to ask you to accept questions and then let you blow into your close and say whatever you want. Okay?
Okay. Well, I think my response is my close. I would like to the committee to consider Amendment 1919, which essentially says that if, and by the way, I said this in my opening, that if this got passed, that I would move for this amendment. It says that if Roe versus Wade is overruled,
Okay.
that
So
we would go back to.
you'd like to have passed out?
Yes, I do.
All right.
If that, we would go back to a baseline of no abortions if Roe versus Wade is overruled.
All right. Senator Barrow has a question while we're passing out the amendment. Go ahead, Senator Barrow.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to ask, I think it was stated that you may have a resolution, so I was going to ask you to speak to the resolution.
Well,
that was before.
Sure,
the
and
amendment.
thank you. Let's see, I don't know if I have it here with me at the table. But basically, it would ask, the resolution, Senator Barrow, was to ask the Attorney General or direct the Attorney General to support Mississippi in its efforts before the Fifth Circuit to outlaw abortion after 15 weeks.
Okay.
I do have. I guess I've only been a lawyer for about 18. It's getting to the point where it's hard, Senator Mills, to do the math, but it's about 35 years, and this is what I see as a lawyer, as a citizen, as a legislator. If the Fifth Circuit, number one, I would like for the panel to consider the amendment. If I would ask if any of the members are willing to offer the amendment, which basically says if Roe versus Wade is overruled, that we would not be approving abortions from 0 to 15 weeks, but we would go back to a baseline of 0 abortions.
All right. So we got a point of order by Senator Perry, and then we're going to have a question for staff in just a second. Senator Perry.
Well, point of order. I don't. Do you have any objection? I'd like to hear from her on the new amendment before we accept it.
Yeah. Oh, we're discussing the amendment. He's putting up. I don't know that anybody has offered it, but I want to ask a question of Senator Milkovich, and also it may come to the staff. Are you envisioning the amendment that was placed on there earlier being stripped, or the amendment that was placed on there earlier remaining in addition to the amendment you would like to see?
Because this is going to.
It's complicated. I would probably. I think the bill is stronger if we go to a baseline. If Roe versus Wade is overruled, we go back to a baseline of no abortion. And to do that, this amendment would do that.
Hold on. The chair moves to withdraw the amendment that I previously. So I want to reconsider the vote as far as the amendment previously offered, which I believe was 2343. To reconsider the vote. Is there any objection to reconsider the vote? No objection to reconsider the vote. With the prior amendment 2343 has been withdrawn. The chair offers chair offers amendment 1919, which is the amendment that Senator Milkovich has said that he would like to see placed on the bill to put it in the posture that he would like. Is there any objection to clarity? All right, Senator Mills has one, and then Senator Barrow. Senator Mills?
I think I'm in the same posture before I'd vote on it. I guess this would be the vote of the bill, Mr. Chairman. But if you would allow us the opportunity to have just a real working debate right now, I'd like to call Ms. Bordley up to this dais.
You want me to sit back?
Why don't y'all both sit there and let's just talk it through. I mean, this is what we need to do as a working committee, and this is an important vote. But
Sure.
if I'd like to kind of question.
Would
Once
somebody
again-
provide Ms. Borderly with a copy of the amendment?
I did.
Okay.
I
All
did.
right. Your questions, Senator Mills.
So what I'd like to know from Ms. Bordley right now, we've heard Senator Milkovich, and I want to hear his close on it. But once again, does this have unintended consequences? Your 2006 legislation that you referred to earlier, and I just want to preface something for the committee. I've had 2 or 3 bills I was filing, and I visited with Ms. Bordley, and she told me it would hurt some laws, so I withdrew it. And and you've given me that guidance. Right now, I'm asking you for the guidance of what you've seen here.
And Senator, if you'd like to discuss the complicated legal issues offline and then bring this bill back at another time, I'm fine with that as well.
I don't think that's what the offer is. At this point, I know that that's perhaps what you care to have, but we brought you back to the table to talk about this actual amendment, and Senator Milkovich has opposed the amendment.
To answer your question.
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. Please, where do you see the amendment?
Unfortunately, the amendment, from a legal point of view, also has the unintended consequence of stripping our current trigger law, because the last part says, in whole or in part, restores to the state of Louisiana the authority to prohibit abortion. Well, giving Louisiana the authority to prohibit abortion means that we have to come back in and pass another law, whereas currently we have a law in place that will go into effect upon the reversal of Roe.
Thank you for that information.
Well, and I mean, that's a language that's a few strokes of the pen between here and the floor. Obviously, you could say if Roe versus Wade is overruled, Louisiana would enforce and implement the statute which enforces a total ban on all abortions. So, if that's it, if we're getting to that fine-tuned of semantics, and the concept is to protect our right to ban all abortions, that could be done with a minor adjustment to 1919, and this is an amendment that was done by staff with the clear intention of saying, if we adopt the bill and Roe versus Wade is overturned, we go back to an absolute ban on abortion in Louisiana. So we could say that in whole or part restores to the state the authority to prohibit abortion and preserves the operation of all Louisiana statutes heretofore passed which ban or limit abortion. I don't know, is that 9 words? But the intent, the concept is simple, that if Roe versus Wade, when Roe versus Wade is overturned, that we would go back to a baseline of we're not killing babies at any age.
Senator Mills?
Thank you. Thank you both for your answer. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, Senator Perry?
Thank you. It appears that the bill itself, I don't know if there's going to be any amendment that we put on there that makes it to the point. Here's where I'm at. I don't know if this is a question or not. I haven't gotten one, and here's where I'm struggling, because I'm not struggling. I'm pro-life, so I'm not going to do anything that's going to hurt what we have in place. I'm not.
Well, Senator Perry, we have no 15-week ban in place. We have none. So if we have a 15-week ban in place, all of a sudden it becomes illegal to kill babies after 15 weeks. And if the Fifth Circuit upholds Mississippi, which they could, this bill would become effective. And by the way, what's been happening in this state is that pro-life bills get passed. Well, anyway, this may not be the proper time to talk about this. But if we do not have a post-15-week ban in place, this creates that. Number 2, if the Fifth Circuit upholds Mississippi, then all of a sudden, if we don't pass this bill, we don't have anything that protects babies that are 15 week and 1 day old. The abortion bills in Louisiana can continue to kill them till we come back into session and enact a statute. It leaves, if we don't enact this, Senator Perry, it leaves a statutory vacuum.
That's not the impression I got from the testimony.
Well, it's okay. Let's do logic. You're a lawyer. I'm a lawyer, and you know, we have lawyers and legal analysts. Senator Barrow's been analyzing and passing laws, Senator Mills. If the Fifth Circuit on February 2nd, 2019 says the Mississippi law is valid, we've looked at the evidence, we've looked at the arguments, we've looked at the law. February 2nd, 2019, the Mississippi statute is upheld. And if this doesn't pass, guess what? It's still legal in Louisiana to kill babies that are 15 weeks old. If we pass this law, and by the way, I think it should be enforced immediately. That's my view as a citizen and as legislator. But even if it's enjoined, or if the Attorney General's office elects not to implement it initially, if on February 2nd, 2019, if the Fifth Circuit rules that day, and they could be a month before that, it could be 6 months after that, if we have this bill in place, it becomes illegal to kill babies after 15 weeks. If we don't have this bill in place, what happens is we can continue to kill babies between February 2nd, 2019 and the time that we come back in session and pass this bill next year. So what is that? Is that 2 months of killing babies that are 15 weeks old? Yeah. How many babies is that?
That's not my appreciation of the process of what would happen if the Mississippi law
is upheld.
It is my appreciation, and that's what I need clarity on. It is my appreciation that in Louisiana, we would currently have something in place that would say less than 15, you cannot.
It's Senate Bill 181. And if we don't pass it, then there is nothing on the books that says you cannot kill babies under 15 weeks or over 15 weeks.
All right.
So if we have a law in place and the Fifth Circuit says it's constitutional, we can immediately enforce it. But if the Fifth Circuit rules 10 months from now and says, look, Mississippi's legal, we have no statute that prohibits abortion after 15 weeks. So that gives the abortion bills a blank check to continue killing babies that are over 15 weeks old until we come back in session. And by the way, we wrestled with that bill on April 17th, 2018 and decided to rule against it, or we didn't do anything with it, but now we're going to do it. Okay? Well, so then we've got 2 months, 3 months, 4 months between the time of the Fifth Circuit ruling and the time we come back in session and pass this. And by the way, if we passed it, but this is the heart of the issue. We're leaving a time frame in which it would be legal to kill 15-week-old babies.
All right.
If we don't have this in place.
All right. And so that's the issue he's trying to frame, that I have a question that perhaps may help you a little bit on that. So we're trying to frame the 15 to 23 weeks, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Borderly, does our law say it's illegal after 23 weeks, or does it just simply say it's illegal?
Our current law says that it's illegal after 20 weeks.
All right. And as far as 1487, our abortion law, it doesn't say anything about 20 weeks. It just simply says abortion is illegal, correct?
And 1487 would go into effect only with the return of the issue to the states. And
all right, so 1487, as it's currently written,
yes,
would cover what Senator Milkovich is concerned about, in your opinion. Is that correct?
I'm not sure I understood everything that he was saying, but I'd stick with what I said before. And may I offer one thing? What I offer legal advice to legislators before the session, during the session, amendments. I'd be willing to work with Senator Milkovich on, and have been willing to work with him on a bill where if 15 weeks is upheld, and that would be a separate statute, but amending into this current law, where he's amending into a trigger law, is a dangerous thing. No matter how many words you put in there, federal courts, once they see that we have gone from 0 to 15, will not let us forget that. And that's what concerns me.
Okay,
Right, Senator
so
Perry.
on that, if the Mississippi law is upheld, take this bill out, okay? If the Mississippi law is upheld overnight, what is allowed in Louisiana? Less this bill. Take the bill out.
It depends on what and how the reasoning of the court is. If it's upheld because the U.S. Supreme Court has said, you know what, this is an issue that belongs in the states, and if you want to ban it at 15, you can, well, then automatically Louisiana bans abortion completely. So it depends on the reasoning.
Without this bill.
Without this bill.
That's okay.
Oh, I disagree. Okay, I legally disagree with that. If we don't pass this bill, we have no post 15-week ban on abortions. So if the Fifth Circuit on February 1st, 2019
Hold up, Senator
bans,
Milkovich. Hold up.
I can complete my sentence.
Hold up. So we're on the amendment is the question, and then we're going to let Senator Milkovich close.
We adopted the amendment, correct?
No.
You have not adopted
We have
the
not.
amendment.
Okay.
Okay, so Senator Milkovich
I'm good.
has an amendment. I am offering the amendment on his behalf. So the amendment is 1919. The chair has offered the amendment. Is there any objection to the amendment? Senator Mills objects to the amendment. If you vote yes, you are for the amendment. If you vote against you're just not in favor of the amendment. You're in favor of leaving the bill in its original position.
We're not going to.
All right. So call the roll.
Senator Perry? No. Senator Barrow? No. Senator Carter? No. Senator Mills? No. Senator Clater?
Yes. And so the
Yes.
amendment fails.
1 yea,
And
4
so
nay.
the bill is in your original form.
I'm going to stay focused.
There's going to be one more question by Senator Mills, and then we're going to let Senator. All right, no more questions. So Senator Milkovich.
That's not what I'm doing.
Okay,
well, I'll say this.
Wait, hold on.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Just going to lay the ground rules. Senator Milkovich is going to be allowed to close. Nobody's going to ask any more questions, and you certainly have the option to say that you wish to work with Ms. Borderly and defer it for any period of time. But it's your call. If you want to go forward,
Well-
go forward.
Senator Perry, you're a trained lawyer. Louisiana has no 15-week ban on the books. So when the Fifth Circuit upholds this, the Mississippi ban, there's going to be a vacuum. Fifth Circuit rules on February 1st, 2019 that the Mississippi law is valid. You can ban abortions after 15 weeks. It's illegal in Mississippi, Senator Perry, but it's not illegal in Louisiana if we don't pass this law. So we'll have to come back into session and try to get a bill passed. Hopefully it'll get through committee. Hopefully it'll get through the process. It'd probably typically be effective on August 1st, 2019. So that would mean if the Fifth Circuit upholds Mississippi on February 1, 2019, and we get a 15-week ban that's effective on August 1st, 2019, that means there's 6 months of killing babies in Louisiana over the age of 15 weeks. We do not have a 15-week ban in place. I mean, and I'm sorry that I haven't been clear about that. We do not have a 15-week ban in place. If we do not pass this, we do not have a 15-week ban in place. If we pass this, number one, our Attorney General could just go ahead and enforce it till the federal courts stop them if they do. Number two, if we don't start forcing it immediately and the Fifth Circuit rules in our favor, as soon as they rule in our favor, our law goes into place because it's already on the books. They rule on February 1st, 2019, it's constitutional to do a 15-week ban. If this bill passes, it becomes illegal on February 1st, 2019 to kill babies over 15 weeks old. If this is not on the books, we're going to have to wait to come back into session, try to get a bill passed that would be effective on August 1st, 2019, when our bills are effective, and we'd have 6 months of killing babies in Louisiana that are over the age of 15 weeks. It is not true that we currently ban all abortions over 15 weeks. We ban dismemberment abortions, which includes some abortions that happen after 15 weeks. We also poison babies to death with neurotoxins. So under our current law, it is legal to kill babies that are over 15 weeks old with neurotoxins. This bill would change that. So, number one, we do not have a 15-week prohibition. This bill would do that. Number two, there's a lapse that will occur when the Fifth Circuit upholds Mississippi. We're going to have to come back into session, and in the meantime, how many babies are going to be killed over the age of 15 weeks? And the dismemberment ban does not stop all post-15-week abortions. It only stops the dismemberment. The abortionists in the state could continue to kill babies with poison, which is one of the ways they perform abortions. So I definitely I think we need to have this on the books to protect and if it saves one baby, but I'm telling you, if the Fifth Circuit rules and we don't have a law on the books, we're sacrificing potentially hundreds of babies.
All right. Thank you, Senator Milkovich. Senator Milkovich is closed. On SB 181, is there a motion? I see Senator Mills' light is lit.
Yes.
Senator Mills.
I have a motion, and I'd like to just a small explanation of the motion. Senator Milkovich's heart is unbelievable, and his passion is second to none. Ms. Boardley, which I've worked with Dorinda for years and years and years, and I have had some really poorly crafted bills that when you sit down with her, she makes it better. And I know her spirit. She just told me she would work side by side with Senator Milkovich to make sure that the chapter of law that could potentially have problems, she would work with him. So what I would like to make a motion is to defer, but it would be under the standing that Ms. Boardley would work with Senator Milkovich, who we have just respect for both sides. And that's the motion I make. It's not necessarily putting it in a graveyard, but it's putting it to get postured a little bit better and not have unintended consequences, which we're having a terrific legal debate, but I would hate for the side of unintended consequences to be correct. So for that reason, I make a motion to defer.
Senator Mills has made a motion to defer. Is there a substitute motion or any opposition?
Substitute motion with one statement.
Senator Perry has a substitute motion. Go ahead, Senator Perry.
Well, I'm making a substitute motion to move favorable with the assurance, and I'll go out as far as a promise that you will continue to work on the language. Otherwise, I will tell you openly right now, if the issues are not cured, I will not vote for it on the floor. Okay?
Yes, sir.
And the reason being is because what's going to happen is all of this, those that vote against this, guess what? We're going to be the ones that look like, oh, they killed a pro-life bill. I'm not going through that. We had that issue 2 weeks ago. I'm not going through it again. So I'm going to move favorable on it. Whether or not the others vote for it, I don't know. And this is probably the most passionate I've gotten in 10 years that I've been here. But people need to understand the process more than anything right now. They need to understand the process. I'm going to move favorable, but I'm begging you to continue to work because this is not clear to everybody what this is going to accomplish, to the point that I think it can hurt. That's it.
All right, Senator Perry has has done the substitute motion to report it favorably. Is there any objection? Yes. There's an objection by Senator Carter that prompts a roll call vote. A vote in favor, yes, is to report it favorably, not amended. A no is not to report it favorably. So call the roll.
Senator Perry? Yes. Senator Barrow? Yes. Senator Carter? No. Senator Mills? Yes. Senator Clater?
That would be a yes. Your bill will be reported favorably.